This was a scientific mix-up. In 2016, Science published a study about how dogs process human speech. Researchers played human voices to dogs while scanning their brains with MRI. The results looked almost perfect. The left hemisphere seemed to process words, while the right hemisphere handled tone of voice. It even looked remarkably similar to how humans process language. The result was very neat, well, maybe a little too neat. Because 1 year later, the authors published a correction. They had accidentally switched left and right when calculating the brain coordinates. But how do you even make a mistake this simple? Humans lie on their backs inside an MRI scanner, while dogs lie on their stomachs. Because the two species were positioned differently, the researchers accidentally flipped the dog's brain from left to right. After the correction, the original claim about which hemisphere handled words and tone had to be reversed. Dogs and humans don't divide language processing between their hemispheres in quite the same way. But one thing remained. The two sides of the dog brain really do seem to have different jobs. And that difference doesn't just stay inside the brain. It can show up in everyday behavior too. One of the easiest places to see it is the paws. Researchers have come up with some wonderfully simple ways to study this. They might watch which paw a dog uses to hold a toy, remove something from its nose, or get food from a puzzle toy. Any single movement means very little. But repeat the same kind of task again and again, and a pattern can emerge. In one study, researchers put a small piece of tape above a dog's nose and watched which paw it used to remove it. Male dogs were more likely to use the left paw, while females were more likely to use the right. Age added another twist. Young males tended to favor the left paw, then gradually shifted toward the right as adults. Females, meanwhile, showed a stronger tendency toward the right paw across different ages. We still don't know whether these preferences are something dogs are born with or something they develop over time. But living with humans may play a role. Researchers observed 62 dogs performing paw-related tasks in their own homes, including shaking hands and using a paw to get food. After 10 days, dogs living with left-handed owners were more likely to prefer their left paw, while dogs living with right-handed owners were more likely to prefer their right. That doesn't mean dogs are thinking, "My human used the left hand, better copy that." The effect may come from years of everyday interaction, where tiny habits gradually influence each other. So your dog may not be copying you. It may simply be living with you long enough to become a little bit like you. Stress can mess with the picture too. Researchers have used food dispensing toys to compare dogs living in different environments. To get the food, the dog has to hold the toy with one front paw while working on it with its mouth. Dogs exposed to higher levels of long-term stress showed weaker paw preferences and were more likely to switch between paws. Similarly, after a short-term stress test, dogs could also temporarily become more likely to switch between paws. Basically, when life gets stressful, the brain's pick a side button may become a little less confident, but paws are only the beginning. For dogs, smell is basically the closest thing to having a superpower. And apparently, even their two nostrils don't always agree on how to use it. Canadian researchers observed 119 dogs at urban parks. When the dogs sniffed secretions from females in heat, deer urine, and coyote urine, they used the right nostril more than 66% of the time. But when the smell came from commercial dog food, the difference between the two nostrils largely disappeared. Apparently, even a dog can be less opinionated when dinner is involved. An Italian research team took the experiment even further. When dogs encountered novel, non-threatening smells such as unfamiliar food, fresh lemon juice, and the scent of a female dog in heat, they initially preferred the right nostril. But after the same smell was presented repeatedly, they gradually shifted toward the left. Then came the weird part. Researchers also presented adrenaline, as well as sweat collected from a veterinarian who had deliberately gone 2 days without showering for the experiment. Yes, you heard that right. 2 whole days. The sweat was collected from his armpits and presented to the dogs as a stress-related odor. And the dogs kept favoring the right nostril throughout the test. So apparently, the researchers were willing to suffer for science. And emotions can change the picture again. When dogs sniffed odors associated with stress in other dogs, they tended to keep using the right nostril. But when they sniffed human sweat collected after people watched a frightening movie, they showed a preference for the left nostril. In other words, dogs may not just be smelling what something smells like. They may also be picking up information about how someone felt. Basically, the dog's nose may be doing more emotional detective work than we give it credit for. Now let's move from the nose to the eyes. Humans have a curious left-right bias when looking at faces. Adults tend to look toward the left side of their visual field first, which corresponds to the right side of the face they're looking at. Babies show a broader version of this tendency, but as they grow, it becomes more specialized, especially for human faces. Dogs show something remarkably similar. When looking at human faces, they tend to look toward the left side of the image. But show them another animal or an ordinary object, and the bias becomes much weaker. Why human faces? After thousands of years living alongside us, dogs have had plenty of time to get very good at reading human faces. They may not understand our taxes, our emails, or why we keep taking pictures of them, but they are very good at watching our faces. Paws, nostrils, and eyes may look like completely different stories, but they could be different expressions of the same underlying principle. The two hemispheres of the brain are not identical, and they don't always process information in the same way. But we should be careful here. A left paw preference does not simply mean, this dog uses its right brain more, and a preference for one nostril does not mean the other hemisphere has switched off. Lateralization is more complicated than that. What researchers are really looking for is a division of labor. Does one side become more involved when a dog faces a particular kind of task, emotion, or stimulus? And the answer may depend heavily on context. Novel smells can produce one pattern, familiar smells another. Calm situations can look different from stressful ones. Even sex, age, living environment, and long-term interaction with humans can influence the pattern. Social information from another dog may produce a different response from information coming from a human. This means lateralization may be less like a permanent label, and more like a flexible strategy. Instead of having a brain that simply says, left, or right, a dog may have two hemispheres that take turns, cooperate, or specialize depending on what is happening around it. And that could explain why scientists sometimes find strong individual preferences, but weak or inconsistent patterns across the entire dog population. So here's the only question I want to leave you with. Is your dog a lefty or a righty? Does it usually prefer the left paw or the right? Tell me in the comments. Maybe your dog has been choosing sides all along. You just never thought to ask. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.